The Minister of Mineral Resources, Mosebenzi Zwane, this past week announced on behalf of the government that a commission of inquiry would be launched in an effort to probe the banking sector's blacklisting of the Gupta-owned companies. Not only that, but the commission, he said, would look further into the policies that dictate banking licenses, how they should be issued, and other matters relating to how the Reserve Bank is run. The ANC's national executive, including the president, have come out denouncing Zwane's remarks and making it clear that he is in no way speaking on behalf of the cabinet. In any event, there is a protocol that governs these things. And I'm now with Mr. JJ Tabane, who is popular for his show, Power Perspective, keeps the nation awake at night when people should be resting, preparing themselves to work, but they can't help but hear what Onkgopotse Tabane has got to say. JJ?
Thank you so much, Brother Tim, for inviting me.
Pleasure to catch up with you.
Wonderful on your, and well done on your show. And this is what the South Africa needs as well.
Yeah, and we appreciate your show too. You know, I've caught a few times late at night, just when I want to do something else, and say, let me hear how this is going to end up like. Wonderful work on Power
Thank
FM.
you. Enjoying it tremendously, Brother Tim.
Now, fortunately, in a way, the irony of it, it's in the evening now, right? Late at night. And now you are fed everything. And sometimes information breaks right in the afternoon.
Absolutely.
You know, when everybody thinks, no, we've done
It's
what
finished,
we can.
yeah.
It's finished. But, you know, that time, 7, 8, is peak time in terms of breaking political stories.
Absolutely.
You've had your fair share of those.
Absolutely. I mean, last week, when the show started, is when Mashaba was elected mayor of Johannesburg.
Exactly.
Just as we started. We actually crossed live to take his inaugural speech live.
Exactly.
So things like that sometimes fall on our lap. But generally, we're not a current affairs show, Tim. We really look at perspective, the news behind the news. So something that broke like the Zewani, like the Minister of Minerals thing that last Friday, we can talk about it this Thursday to say, all right, fine, we've heard all the noise now. What exactly happened? And we did this, I think, on Sunday with a round table of media experts. People like Sipong Gwema, Kofi Kwakwa, and so on, and Temba Seputokeli, to just say, how on earth can such a thing actually happen? You know, where a minister could be denounced. I mean, it doesn't happen often in the last 22 years.
And that's why I'm suggesting that everybody knows there's a protocol of sorts which governs these things, particularly this notion of collective applies in the case of cabinet.
Absolutely.
Maybe not necessarily.
In fact, it's more complex in cabinet because you've got cabinet committees. And sometimes you have got the IMCs, which are essentially cabinet committees, subcommittees to deal with specific matters. These committees must process things first before they go to cabinet. So essentially what would happen, in this case, what would have happened normally would be that a draft decision, essentially, would have been processed by a subcommittee, in this case the IMC, and then being taken through cabinet. Now, one or two things can happen. Cabinet could reject that recommendation, or cabinet could accept it. So if you submitted something from a subcommittee and then we're not present in cabinet, you may assume it's been approved. And then go on along the lines of what was anticipated to be the decision.
But here's where I want to differ with you slightly, and we'll talk about other political things in a moment. My understanding of it is this. That's why there's a secretary, right? You sit, you deliberate, different presentations, there's an agenda, and so on. It's anticipate there will be specific resolutions. Some of the stuff may be refined or referred back.
Absolutely.
And then it's chaired. In this instance, cabinet chaired by the deputy president. So they decide. These are the things we've discussed. Out of the whole list, these are the ones we think are a priority to be announced to the public. Then a designated person speaks on behalf of...
In this case, often Minister Khadeb. Or Minister Mutambi in the beginning.
But recently it was Minister Khadebe who then communicated what cabinet discussed. It probably discussed more, but what it resolved. Right? And that's it, isn't it? Or that's how it's supposed to be.
In general terms. But I mean, precisely because the cabinet committees, when they sit, they're almost like cabinet. It's simply that not the entire cabinet is there. Right? And in many cases, cabinet doesn't second-guess those committees because in those committees where the hard work, the hard critical analysis and refining actually takes place. So I'm assuming that this particular decision, draft decision, was thrown out. That's why a cabinet was able to come out so strongly and say this is not the decision of cabinet presidency,
but here's the point.
government.
But here's the point, JJ. That, okay, there, whatever decision and where it was taking place, Cabinet has issued its own statement. But later that evening, the minister issued his own statement, which was carried by the Business Day and other publications, and it had a sort of life of its own, but it was not dominating the news in the morning of Friday. And then in the afternoon, the spokesperson of the minister felt he should go and correct the perception. And then the minister felt that no, the correction is itself not correct. And therefore went on a speaking campaign of sorts by granting interviews in the evening to explain what the whole statement was all about. And 30 minutes or so later, the presidency then nullified and distanced itself from this.
Chaos.
And of course, the subsequent statement by the ANC, we haven't had that hard-hitting a statement in recent times against anybody in government, saying appalling, atrocious, and irresponsible action must be taken. What happened here with the Minister Mosebenzi Zwane specifically? And the other important thing, he was speaking about something that falls outside his purview.
Yes.
It was the financial services sector, and it was not mining. So go ahead.
It's a clear and blatant demonstration of this so-called state capture. You remember that the ANC closed that investigation, saying, no, nothing is happening here. And so people mustn't worry. Ignore what Fiki Mentor said. Ignore what the Jonas said. There's no state capture. And here is a glaring demonstration. Here's a minister who has been rumored to have been appointed, right, as along the lines of what Fiki and Jonas were alleging. And so he really is demonstrating for us the internal discussions. You couldn't have woken up, team, and decided that this is a long list of things that are going to happen if this was not discussed somewhere thoroughly. I think that it's in the execution where he messed up. Probably he was meant to wait until the president was back into the country, until the cabinet actually discussed this thing. But it's clear that there was a draft decision somewhere discussed to do the bidding for the Guptas. I think we need to call this thing by its name. Do the bidding for the Guptas, because here is a company where banks have closed its account. And why should cabinet, get involved? All of us from time to time, our banks do things that we don't like. Must we all rush to the minister and ask for them to intervene?
Well, ideally, if government was prepared to intervene.
Yeah, I want to be on the queue to go and report my bank for being nasty to me. But you can't have this thing. It is too clumsy. And I just think that Mosebenzi Zwane just brought to the surface something that's been bubbling under, that so many people have been saying, look, you need to deal with this state capture thing. And the rebuttal to say, there are other families that capture, that's neither here nor there. The law is the law. If something is wrong, we deal with it. If you have evidence of other people doing the same thing, bring it to the fore.
But what exactly then do you think many people, especially those who are closer to the way government operates, right? Because commentators and anybody's opinion may go all over the place. What is it that people are concerned about regarding what Mosebenzi Zwane did? The fact that he spoke about it, or the fact that they are actually considering acting on behalf of the Gupta family? Which is which here?
I think it's both. In a sense that obviously the critical thing is the fact that in fact people have considered this, cabinet has actually considered this, or at the very least the minister and the president, because he can't have just been on a frolic of his own. I doubt that very much. It's clear that there was a strategy being cooked up about how do we protect these Guptas who are being lambasted by the banks and so on and so on. Secondly, it put government in a disrepute, because while the government is trying to do damage control about being shown not to be controlled by the Guptas, there he demonstrates, right, in a most glaring way, in that, as you correctly said, it's not even his portfolio. So quite clearly, he has got some additional interest that is strange, that is not in line. Thirdly, you're talking about a situation where we're about to be downgraded to junk status. And one of the things that have kept us out of that is the way in which the banking system in this country has been commended around the world. And this is not a frivolous thing. If you look at 2008's recession, how we ducked that bullet, it was partly because of the way our banking sector has been allowed to operate in a particular way, in a particular focused way. And it doesn't make it perfect, but at least it makes it stand out globally about that this thing, people know what they are busy with, people know what they are doing. And what Zwane is proposing, and God forbid that it ever is made a decision, is that no, go and tamper with this same banking system, right? For no apparent reason, other than the defense of this family that is now finding itself on the wrong side of these banks.
I mean, you cover different areas, different topics, and you get feedback from your outspoken listeners, may I add, and you also provoke them, I must say.
That's my mandate.
and you've rubbed a few politicians the wrong way around, right? This is not an isolated incident. We must see it in the broader context of what's going on. We've just had the local government elections, and another tense and emotional day, politically speaking, for some politicians. What is happening, actually, from the sense you get from the listeners? Where are South Africans? What is their view of what's going on? And from where you are sitting, talking to the different policy makers, opinion makers, what do you think is going on?
Look, I think there is a sense of despair that has happened. And if you look at how the electorate has reacted, if you look at the results, the election results, at least fortunately now we don't have to guess. You remember that before the elections there was this Ipsos Mark, survey, and people dismissed that to say, no, it can't be. And it just happened to be exactly what was predicted, right? Because there's a sense of despair, the sense of distance between the leaders and the people. Really, it comes down to that sense of distance. Fortunately, the ANC is not denying that. It's just that in a manner in which it demonstrates whether it's listening or not, so far it's not coming across well. Because even after the elections, after this drabbing, especially the metros, you still have a lot of arrogance, right? We had the new mayor of Ekurhuleni. His first order of business was to insult the media. You say, they are the ones who've made. Then insult the voters and say they don't remember Solomon Mahlangu. I mean, what the hell, Tim? This guy says you voted differently because you don't know what the struggle is, which means that please continue to be loyal regardless of the actions of the leadership. I think that's unacceptable. And I think that I bring it down to that if you want the situation to change and you are the ruling party, you got to close that sense of distance.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are some key leaders. Zola Skoye spoke last week. Paul Mashatile had an excellent speech also to the leaders in Gauteng. There are a lot of people who are beginning to now talk in the language that says, let's humble ourselves to listen more to what our people want to see this democracy doing for them.
But Sipho Pichana also spoke at the funeral of the Reverend Arnold Stoffile. Very popular speech. It went viral. People checking it, cross-checking, and sending each other the speech. But then the response to the speech, what did you make of that?
Look, there are two ways you should look at the speech. I think that a lot of people responded very positively to the speech because that's a kind of introspection that a lot of people who support the ANC want to see that kind of introspection happening, right? Whether or not that speech would trigger more action, I doubt. Yes. I think that at the end of the day, it looks like things will have to get worse first before they get better. And it's because of the nature of politics, Tim. The nature of politics have a certain dose of two-facedness, unfortunately. What am I talking about? 2009, Sipho Pichana was one of the business people who wrote an article that puzzled me. An article that says, please leave Zuma alone. Don't prosecute Zuma. You can't just act so mechanically that the constitution says this, and so you're going to go after Zuma because it's like going on an oncoming train. This is what Sipho Pichana said. So in a sense, he gave us Zuma amongst the other people. Now he comes a few years later to say, hey, I'm washing my hands. But it also has another angle that, our president, he does things that even people who want to defend him end up washing their hands. Here is a typical example of a Sipho Pichana. Sipho Pichana didn't mince his words. Many ANC leaders, put it nicely like the Gauteng people saying, do the right thing. He says, no, if Zuma was here, I would tell him, resign. Yes. Resign now. Yeah. But it's the same guy in 2009 who said, please stop prosecuting Zuma.
Now, the president, as we speak, is not in the country and has been out for a week or a couple of weeks, right?
A bit conveniently, I must say.
Well, he might argue he did not know that things will,
Yeah, because, you don't cook up a crisis. But we've come to expect, a departure from normal leadership interventions from the president, unfortunately.
So, yes. Now, when he comes back in a couple of days' time, what do you expect? Well, how is
I
he going to address?
I expect nothing differently. I think he's putting his head down because, unfortunately, despite what the ANC wants to tell us, a lot of people are blaming him for the mess that the ANC finds itself in. Whether be it so many splits away under his watch or, just the sense of being engulfed by a scandal, So he's not going to come out and address the nation. You need some kind of moral pedestal to do something like that.
Well, but you know, if you can summarize it for me, and I'm sure you've applied your mind, and I know you're plugged in. There are people who are telling you things.
Sure.
The issues around Minister of Finance Pravin Gordhan, we've just spoken about Minister Zewani, and other, you know, the effort to occupy Luthuli House, which did not happen, but nevertheless it generated interest and news on its own. All of these things, you know, and the speculation that he might even reshuffle cabinet. What do you think is the likely response from President Zuma over the next few weeks?
Look, first of all, I think that he won't do anything that would startle you and I. I think he'll try and keep to the safe part of doing things. He's not going to do something that he did in December 2012 or 2014, where he decided to plug a Minister of Finance from obscurity.
2015.
This past year. He's not going to do anything that dramatic. I think what that event did was to humble the president, to show him that he doesn't have the kind of power he thought he always had, that you need to balance the power. You know, you need to act in a manner that you can take people with you. So I think that lesson, I think, has been learned. I'm not quite sure what the whole issue of Pravin being sort of almost harassed by the Hawks is all about. But a lot of people, Tim, and you know, I forgive them for thinking so, they see the president's hand in this thing. Because he's a powerful person who can bring both parties into a room and get them to act differently. But he makes a point of saying, oh, I can't intervene. But who asked him to intervene?
Well, here's another point. I mean, the Communist Party has already said something must be done about Minister Zwane. The COSATU has expressed its reservations. ANC, very hard-hitting, unusual statement from itself in terms of what happened with the minister.
You know that if he fires Zwane, he would then be agreeing that there is state capture. He's not about to do that. I'm sorry. Not if I look at the trajectory of how he has responded. When I mean, if you look at people, some ministers who people have given him a list to say fire so and so far, he doesn't respond that way. It's very rare that he responds in that way. He has managed on one or two occasions to fire somebody based on a public protector's report, right? Just take the example, for example, of the recent Nkandla thing where he was asked to reprimand ministers. What did he do? Did he reprimand any of them? He wrote them a letter, Tim, saying, I reprimand you. I mean, frankly, that's a joke. So I'm not expecting anything dramatic. I'm not sure what's happening with the Hawks thing and whether Pravin is gonna survive. I think that sense will prevail. When I listen to the noises from the ANC, from people I speak to in government, I think sense will prevail. But it would have bruised Pravin and made him, in a sense, be careful about how he responds to what the president wants.
All right. Thanks very much. Onkgopotse JJ Tabane.
Thank you, Tim.
Much appreciated.